the same. So these are the directions, and we'll take you through. So you're going to be in live text, that dashboard you just saw where you have the assignment. It'll say, and begin your assignment for whatever your handbook is. Okay, so you'll click on the red begin assignment. Then it's going to take you through this 3-step submission process. Step 1 gives you a description. Step 2 is where you can start attaching these external files. So it says click on attach files to select the files that you need to submit. So that's what we're going to do as we go through here. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. And I know it's hard to see from there, but it's step 1, step 2, step 3. This is the screen essentially that you'll have. Okay? So keep going. Make sure you've read all the way to the bottom of this file. It's like 7 or 8 pages. So, okay. So what you're going to do, you'll click on the attached files. You'll get a screen that looks like this. Everything should already be in your live text portfolio. So you're going to click on previous files, this tab over here, because you've already got them in live text. So you'll be able to take them from live text right to the Pearson site. So you'll click on previous files here. And they've got their own little set of directions for that. But then we're going to attach the selected files, this is the green one. So what you're going to do, you'll be in previous files, and you'll see the names of your planning commentary and your lesson plans and so on. So these are the ones you've uploaded. You'll just click on the one you want and tell it to be attached. And that will put it in. And what you'll see will be, there'll be different slots for each piece. And then you'll submit your assignment. You're going to click on the send to TPA. So it tells you about that. Use the dialog box next to each. The what to submit section. Here's the slots. That's what I was talking about. So I had somebody who was having trouble. So as he was sitting next to me submitting, we kept taking screenshots. I'm like, finally, I can see this thing, and I know what it looks like. So you will actually have slots for, here's your context for learning. Here's your lesson plan. Any instructional materials, your assessment, your planning commentary. There's a slot to fill for each thing. So you've already got them uploaded. You're just going to attach them from being in live text to each of these slots. One of the new things that they've added is that before they let you submit, they are going to insist that you open each document to make sure it's the right one, that it's the one you thought. Because every once in a while, somebody attached the blank one, not the one they completed. That's not a good day, because obviously there's nothing in there for them to assess, right? Or they got the wrong video or whatever. So they actually now make you open each one, and as you do, you check off that it's the right one. And at the end, you actually have to check off that, yes, I've got everything I want. So then they don't let you go back and resubmit because you checked them. So then at the very bottom, there's a little bitty checkbox here. It says, yep, I've read and understand the terms of service. Here's where you're going to put in your authorization key. So that code that you're getting back, it's that long. It's a nice beauty thing. Copy paste it right out of the email or type it in. Make sure you have the capitals, spaces, all that stuff the same. You need that key because that's what tells them you already paid. And it was part of your student teaching fees. And then send it to TPA. And it will send it off to them. Once you've sent, you are not done. Okay? You're almost done, but not quite. Once you've sent it, you're going to get an email back. And a message will state your files have been transferred and they're awaiting verification. You have to open that email you get back and click in there to say, yes, this is me, I am submitting it. So you do have to open that email you get back, and there's another click you have to do there. If you don't do that, I won't see it submitted, and you'll be emailing me saying, I submitted 4 times and I can't get it to go. So you got to open that email you get back and click on that. So very important not to miss that step. And then you're finally to the bottom. So like I said, make sure you get to the very end of the document. You'll have done all the steps. They have tried to do a pretty good job now of making sure you can't miss something, right? They've got the slots that you fill in. They make you check that it's right, you know, and they do that verification thing at the end that this is really your work and you're submitting it. So, questions on that part? Okay. So that's the process for submission. Once you submit, your little box will turn gold for me in live text. If you've got more than one screen, I'll be able to see which one you submitted, you know, which assignment and so on. So we were just looking at the TPA submission form The submission requirements shows you some of the error messages that can happen. And so I talked a little bit about a couple of wrong file types. Not having all your lesson plans in one file is one of them. Okay, it doesn't like it today apparently. One more try. No, not going to go there. Okay, it's in Light or in D2L. You can open it there. Those are kind of the main things. There is an error message for if your video is not readable or they can't hear it or whatever. So you do want to try to make sure that you talk loud enough. You might want your mentor teacher to do the videotaping, especially if you're moving around the room. That might be easier, or your university supervisor if they happen to be visiting that day. If you can be in a room, a lot of the, especially elementary classrooms, will have a classroom where there's a student that has some type of hearing impairment and you wear the microphone. You know what I'm talking about? And it almost sounds like surround sound, especially when you're videotaping. It makes it really nice for them to hear. So if you have the opportunity to be in that classroom the day you're videotaping, that's a good thing to have, even if your students don't need it. Other error messages, I've seen one once where the person's answers were too brief. They just did not answer enough of the question to even get scored. So you want to make sure, again, go back to the prompt that you've answered all the parts and everything that they were looking for in the rubric. Those tend to be most of them. And so that document is in D2L. You can see it as well, but it just tells you what the error codes are. So back here. So you've seen it when you log in. Your TPA should be submitted no later than April 17th. The goal for that is ideally, in a good world, Pearson will have it back to us in 3 to 4 weeks. So by the time you're done with your student teaching, you will know your score. If there's anything you need to fix, you can do that right away. We can get you done. Like I said, if you need to have anything that has a 1 has to be redone. So kind of keep that in mind. Nationally, in August, they set a national cut score of 42. That's a recommended. There are about 22 states using TPA right now. Lots of them use it for licensure. And so as you maybe go to teach in another state, it is entirely possible that now you could take your TPA score. Excuse me. You could take one more try. Okay. That you could take that score, go to that state, and they say, yep, this is a national test, you've got your license. As long as you meet that state's requirements. So no additional tests, etc. Minnesota, in October, set cut scores as well, for recommended levels. So for task 1, they want a total score in task 1, those first 5 rubrics, of 13. So if you think about it, 5 rubrics, we wanted you to get a 3 on each. That would be a 15, so you can get a 2 on a couple of them, you'd still be okay and meet that score. Same thing for task 2, a 13 out of the 15. And task 3, that's the assessment one, they set it at 12, because they know that that one's been a little bit harder for people. So that's your goal, to meet those 3. Like we said, if you have 1s, you're going to have to fix those. Ideally, we see that everybody is passed. We did actually have some people this last semester, and I don't remember 4 or 5 of them that scored up in the 50s. So, I mean, we've got people doing really good stuff. Make sure you answer all of the question as clearly as you can. The person scoring it is going to be someone who has at least 3 years of teaching and a master's degree in your field or your area. They will know the Minnesota standards. They will have no connection to SMSU, so they can't know you anyway personally. But they are someone who's in Minnesota, knows our standards, knows what the teaching is like here. And so you just want to be explaining things enough so that that person who isn't in your classroom is going to know what's going on, what you're trying to, tell them about. So.
What if I have Common Core standards because I'm a South Dakota student teaching?
Aha! For your TPA, make sure your lesson plan addresses the Minnesota ones. Actually, I would tell you do literacy, because Minnesota does Common Core for literacy as well. So then you're okay. We don't do it for math yet, but we do it for literacy. So
I was planning to do mine in math.
Okay. Well, and you could, but then I would just make sure you address the Minnesota standards for math as far as your TPA is concerned.
So on my lesson plans, I would put the Minnesota State standards instead of the Common Core.
I'd probably put them both. You know, I call that a bonus if I'm scoring it, that you're aware of both, and you could say that in your commentary. I was trained in Minnesota. I'm student teaching in South Dakota. Who knows where Minnesota's going to go with that? Our math standards are up for revisions this next year, and that's a big part of the debate is, are we going to go with Common Core 2 or not? So being aware of both absolutely would be a plus. I say, when in doubt, give them more than they need. That's always a good answer, so yes.
Now, I see your last sentence down there in red. Didn't it used to be that you couldn't have any more than one?
There are some automatic ones, and I think that's maybe what you're thinking. And there are certain ones that if you score an automatic one, you automatically do not pass go. And they are things like having a clear and evident cultural bias against certain students in your classroom, or not ever addressing anything to do with the students on an IEP in your classroom. Things like that, that are like, will get you fired if you're a teacher, right? So those that are specific content inaccuracies, I saw that once in math where the person was teaching geometry and all about parallel lines, and her lines were never parallel, and she never mentioned that that was something you needed to have to do these proofs. Just did not know her content. And so those kinds of things are automatic ones, and that will send you back. But other than that, those are the automatic one things.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's what you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. And I believe they're listed on the rubrics that it says, you know, this is a really bad one. So
Going back to videotaping, does it matter if our teacher's in the room or not? Okay.
no. And really the person that should be on the videotape is you, right? The
Right.
video is about you. It's good to see the students, and you want to make sure you can hear the students and so on. But the person they want to see is you. You're the person that's getting scored here. So, you know, your teacher doesn't have to be there or any of that. So
My teacher wants to be out of the room. She requested that she could, so that students weren't looking at her or trying
Sure.
to ask her questions or anything. And so
Right.
I just want to make sure that that wasn't like
Right.
a no to be in the video without
No,
a supervising
no,
teacher in
that's
the room
fine.
or something. Okay.
being in the video is good. I've scored one of those too, where I think I saw the person twice in the whole video. She was walking around back and forth. I saw her kind of walking through once or twice. I could hear her fine, but I almost never saw her. What I saw was the screen up in front all the time. So I would say videotape a few times ahead of time. First, your students get used to it, so they're not in the back of the room waving to the camera, and, you know, fooling around and all of that, so that they're just used to the camera being there and they don't care. You also videotape something you care nothing about. You know, the first 5 minutes of the morning, practice clipping it, practice doing the handbrake on it, so when it comes to the real deal, you're comfortable with it and not going to be nervous about did this work, right? That's going to take a couple extra minutes, but then you will feel much better about the whole thing. Your students are used to the video, they're not making hijinks all the time in the background, and you've got it. I would say videotape all of your lessons from the 3 to 5 days, because then you can go back and pick whatever your best pieces are. You only have one day, and then something goes wrong with that video, now this is not good, right? You might have to start over which unit you're doing and everything. So just videotape the whole works, then you can pick out what you want. So, yes.
My mentor teacher has a habit of chiming in the middle of my lesson, and he's the videotaper.
Aha! Yeah, you know what, I would just, if that happens during your time, you know, I would kind of encourage them, like, I need this to just be me.
Okay.
But if it happens, I would just address it in your commentary. My mentor teacher likes to chime in, and we kind of co-teach things from time to time, and so this is who you're hearing, so that they know who it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the first time that's ever happened, so, yeah.
I see my teacher a lot.
Yep.
Like,
If
more
one
than
of the
an hour
students
there.
doesn't agree to, you know, be in the video or use the work, do you still, I mean, you still include them in your lesson plans, right?
Right.
Like, say there's 12 students and so and such, you just don't use the video.
Right, so
with
her
them,
question is,
or
what if you don't get permission back from all your students? People have dealt with this different ways. You might change the seating for that day. The students that you do have permissions are gonna sit more up in front. Sometimes you'll get a class, maybe you only get 8 or 10 of them out of the whole class that get permissions back. It's okay for you to do your lesson just with a small group. And sometimes that is what you need to do. Maybe you're doing a literacy lesson and they're moving around in their centers. Your instruction piece is with the small group. That would be what you videotape anyway. You just need to have permissions from everybody who's seen in that video.
Okay.
So do we upload those permission slips, or how do we prove that there's permission?
You're gonna sign off that you have them.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
honesty.
they used to, in the very beginning, they had the mentor teacher sign off and you had to get that and scan it in and everything, and now they expect you to have them should anybody come back and ask.
Okay,
But yeah, they don't make you like scan them in and include them,
okay.
so.
How long do we need to keep those in our files then?
You know, I would say once your TPA is scored and you passed and all is good,
Okay.
you don't need them anymore. I would hang on to them until you know you passed everything. After that, you don't need them anymore, so. Any other questions? Yeah.
Realistically, after we do all the videotaping and we have our lesson plans written, to write up all of the paperwork, what are we looking at for time? I mean, is it like 3 weeks worth of work?
No,
Or are we
no, no,
talking
no.
like 4 hours worth of work? Because
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, it's so much work, it's so much work. Like,
And I don't know that it really is all that terrible. People don't like to write. You know, I would do it in chunks. As soon as you get your planning done, I would go ahead and write that commentary.
okay, 'cause
Don't
like,
wait till you're done with the whole thing.
this week and next week, I'm videotaping.
Okay.
So the week after, the first week in March, they have spring break. And that's when I was thinking that I would be doing my home part of it.
Right.
Is that realistic?
Yes.
To have it in a week?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, there's roughly 14 or 15 questions to answer.
Okay.
And again, if you've looked at them ahead of time as you're planning things, you can even jot yourself some notes down about here's what I'm going to answer on each part. I would think you could answer it in a day. You know, if you're just going in and answering the questions and you've kind of got all your ducks in a row, I don't anticipate this is taking only those, 40 hours to do this. You know, and that's the piece. I know this seems like a really big thing that you're being asked to do now. I went through SMSU in the mid-90s and did my student teaching then. I wrote a unit, I videotaped, I journaled the whole thing, I collected samples of student work. Almost everything that's in the TPA, I did back then.
Yeah.
Now it's packaged, and you send it to Pearson instead of sending it to SMSU. The requirements haven't drastically changed. It's just in a different format, and this format actually has a research base that says, you know what, if you score well on this, there's a very good likelihood you're going to be an excellent teacher in the classroom as well. So you can show that to a principal that's hiring you and say, hey, here's what I did. I've got evidence now. It's not just one person, my mentor teacher saying I did a great job, but here's somebody who doesn't even know me who scored this that says I did really well on this.
I think it's just overwhelming when you look at it and say a maximum of 9 pages.
Exactly.
A maximum of 13 is like, what?
But you know why that is? The very first training I went to on this, I kid you not, I got a math one that was 300 pages long.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would just drop out.
And the worst thing was, this course got lots of 1s and 2s. They scanned like every page of the teacher edition in, and they answered a mile on every question and never got to the point. They never asked what the prompt was asking them.
Right.
You know, and that's the biggest thing. Are you answering the question that they're talking about? And look at the rubric and make sure, you know, they're going to find what they're looking for.
Right.
This person had pages upon pages of random blah, 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 and never really got to the point.
So when they say a maximum of
Yeah.
9 pages, so say,
Open it up.
I mean,
It very likely may
Should not
not
be
take
like
that much.
Explain
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and if it does, great. I mean, that's why I say,
Right.
don't be afraid to write.
Yep.
Give them that extra sentence or two that asks the prompts that are in like a rubric 4 and 5. Usually those prompts or those rubrics are 1 or 2 more sentences. That's all it takes. But people kind of don't want to write.
But don't
they
try
want
to
be done.
hit that just for the fact of hitting it.
Right, yeah, but, yeah. So,
Hey.
okay. Let me see if I got
Get an
much else
email.
on here. I think I'm pretty close to the end. Oh, yeah. This would be the close to the end part. So, there's kind of a domino effect that happens here. You're gonna submit your TPA. I would recommend you do that before you take over teaching full-time, if possible, so that you can have that done before you're writing lesson plans for everything you're teaching all day long. Otherwise, do it on the way back down, right? When you've been teaching full-time and now your mentor teacher's starting to take things over, that's another good time. But trying to do this when you're also writing lesson plans for everything else is a lot. So kind of, pace yourself, see what's gonna work best for you. Once you've submitted it, like I said, I'll be able to see it on my end, who submitted their TPAs. We wait the 3 to 4 weeks, usually, for Pearson to get scores back. Sometimes it takes longer. They don't always have enough scores for everybody who's submitting. So that's not in our control. But once we get the scores back, if you need to do any revisions, you're gonna wanna get those done and back to us right away. Your portfolio review is that Monday of final